Hope everyone's been having a good end of year giving season. We just got our caging results in. The top line is do we have Greg on? Let me just check. Okay. So I'm covering this. We have a 4% decrease in mail revenue, a 5% decrease in number of gifts. That's November 2023 versus November 2022. Less severe decrease than we've seen in the past. And my gut feeling, don't quote me on this, but just amongst us, is my gut feeling is that this is probably people are mailing more at the end of year. And a lot of what we've seen in terms of revenue declines are also spending declines. US Postal Service has said they're having an overall 10% decrease in mail volume. Don't think nonprofits have been that severe from the numbers that I've been looking at, but there has been a pullback. And so caging revenue will go down when mail volume goes down necessarily. Sector by sector, environment, health charity, diseases, international affairs were the ones that went up. The ones with the asterisk had smaller volumes, so take those three with a grain of salt. All of the other ones were well over $1 million, and so we had a little bit more guidance here. I would say that you'll see references to faith communities throughout this presentation. This may be a more than 1 month thing for those that are religious organizations. We'll talk a little bit about that. Any questions on the mail side of things? Then we're fortunate to have Adva with us today. Adva is our Chief Strategy Officer with the more digital side of things. And she's going to talk through some of the things that we saw for Giving Tuesday. There will be a full-on webinar on this and the 2024 look ahead. But this is a sneak previewer for just our State of the Union viewers. So, Adva?
Yeah, thanks so much. Very excited to chat with you all about our Giving Tuesday results. This was across about 35 digital clients that we could look at last year versus this year in more detail. So very excited to share those results with you all. So we heard from the industry, Giving Tuesday reported results were that revenue was just up slightly 0.6% and donations were down 10%. But for our clients, the vast majority of our clients, we actually saw in some cases very significant increases. And the interesting thing was this was across verticals. We really didn't see, as we might in some cases, certain verticals stand out as, really doing not well or extremely well. Of course, humanitarian orgs right now, especially that are that have missions around some of what we're seeing in the news, are doing exceptionally well. But really, we saw revenue increase overall, again, across all verticals, which was really great to see. And hopefully that trend continues, of course, going to end of year. So we saw almost 50. Oh, sorry, go back, Nick. Thank you. We saw about 50% increase in digital revenue on Giving Tuesday overall, a 42% increase in the number of digital gifts, 75% of more clients increased revenues. And the ones that didn't, we have very specific reasons we know why that was. For example, for a hospital, a lot of those in that are fundraising for hospitals now, their boards aren't allowing them, for example, to pixel websites. And so targeting for ads becomes a little bit more difficult with privacy issues and so forth. And then others that maybe didn't fare as well, which we'll talk about later, didn't have matches either. And so they kind of struggled a little bit this year. 87% of more clients increased the number of gifts as well. Next slide, please. So we looked at what constituted really successful Giving Tuesday campaigns, and we uncovered 5 factors overall that really made a difference. Omni-channel, programmatic promotion, so that's programmatic advertising. We'll dive into each one of these in a little bit in more detail. Texting, just smart advertising, being smart about our spends, and then matches as well, and some testing we did around that too. All right, so let's dive into omni-channel. I think we all know about a decade ago, a successful Giving Tuesday campaign may have been kind of spray and pray, blast email, and maybe a social ad, and that worked well back then when there was less competition, both in the nonprofit sector and also from the for-profit sector. But today, really, we have found that it has to be data-led and audience-first omni-channel strategy that really targets individuals wherever they are receptive to messaging. So that's emails, social, of course, still display, search, influencer marketing, programmatic video, audio, native, and basically wherever you can find folks. And within these channels, I think it's also trying new formats, audiences, and enhancing targeting options, again, rooted in that smart data. And clients with increased programmatic investments saw increases in also branded search volume and revenue, in some cases ranging from 20 to 40% year over year. There was a large health organization that added audience first programmatic HTML5 display, video carousel ads, and also meta advertising, and expanded their reach and media mix. And we recommended increasing also their search budget and introduced Giving Tuesday messaging across a lot of digital sub-channels 2 weeks earlier than we did in 2022. And we saw a growth of 30% in revenue and 20% in gifts, and net return of several times their increased costs as well. So an example of some good success there. So expanding on that a little bit, of course, the non-digital channels are also important. This goes back again to continuing with that omni-channel strategy. So texting and connected TV definitely drove substantial number of online gifts, and getting those gifts also does require the non-digital efforts. So again, direct mail, those that were in direct mail in November had better Giving Tuesday results. We had several that mailed postcards that were obviously less expensive than a whole package, that drove donors to a Giving Tuesday donation page. And for the larger organizations that already have really mature Giving Tuesday programs and fundraising programs, DRTV seemed to really bolster their revenues as well. And just as our for-profit friends have started promoting their post-Thanksgiving sales earlier and earlier, we also saw that nonprofits saw the benefit of starting earlier with Giving Tuesday messaging. Some found success extending deadlines after Giving Tuesday, some of those seeing 17% of their revenue after the day was done. And still others received over 50% of their revenue after 5 p.m. on Giving Tuesday itself as well. For programmatic advertising, for those of you that aren't as familiar with it, it's basically media buying that uses automated tech to broker ad placements in real time. And it targeted individuals versus, for example, whole websites or landing pages, although you can do that as well. And we also can use modeled data to target your best donors, potential donors, etc. And successful nonprofits used connected TV ads, online video, and audio as well. And our clients on average had a 5-time return on ad spend, which is really spectacular for those non-acquisition audiences. Acquisition is definitely still a net investment. So for example, we saw those international relief organizations, for example, this one had a 75% increase in revenue and a 212% increase in programmatic giving revenue. But we also saw, for example, a local food bank had nearly a 5x return on ad spend, and a large health organization had 2.6 return on ad spend. They did increase their programmatic revenue significantly, and also their gifts as well. So email definitely continues to be our workhorse, as retailers turned Cyber Monday into Cyber Week, with some of them even kind of co-opting Giving Tuesday themes for their own sales promotion. So that's a whole other discussion there. But because of that, nonprofits also continue to have to increase some of their email volume as well. So while that worked, texting really took center stage, I think, in a large way this year, allowing organizations to combat some of that initial softness, and others just adding that omni-channel surround sound mix to their experiences that they're putting out there. So Toys for Tots outraised actually all of 2022 Giving Tuesday with one text campaign, which was really spectacular. Obviously, they have this is a perfect time of year for them. They fundraise, do a lot of their fundraising and revenue right before Christmas to get those gifts into the hands of children before Christmas, and we really were able to leverage texting to help ramp all of that up. And then we also saw an advocacy organization went from one text to 3 and added net revenue of 55% just from texting, which was great. So we definitely want to continue expanding on that with our clients. And then finally, smart advertising was very important. We saw huge cost increases on Meta. Costs per thousand were up 40 to 60%, which we thought was a lot, but then Google actually outdid Meta, and cost per click were up 300 to 800% on Giving Tuesday. So we really saw a lot of kind of headwinds there. With those increased costs and increased for-profit competition. We saw the travel industry conduct and promote Travel Tuesday on Giving Tuesday. And again, there was a lot of that co-opting of Giving Tuesday day of. And then, of course, the Cyber Monday expanded into Cyber Week, and all of the promotion really expanded in the for-profit industry. So just increased competition overall, not even just within the nonprofit sector, but external forces as well. So one way we had to kind of quickly combat that was focusing on first being really relevant with our creative. So prioritizing also brand terms and exact match in search, knowing that broad match or even phrase match can bring unwanted search or higher bidding, some from the for-profit sector as well. We really were vigilant on bidding to note where opportunities lie, with also shifting some ad spend to later in the day. So being really nimble with that. The morning was a little bit softer. Pre-Giving Tuesday was a little softer in ads, but we were really able to kind of crank up the spends later in the day, and that did very well for the clients that we were hands-on keys for. And then just strategic budgeting for day of giving, and making sure we were really ramping that up again on day of, but also making sure that really priming the audience with awareness generation before, to make sure that they were that our clients were top of mind before Giving Tuesday. And then matches, as we alluded to before, are becoming really a necessity now. I think it was a nice to have before. So those that did not have a match for Giving Tuesday did have some revenue dips. We saw a health organization had a 277% increase in revenue and 177% increase in gifts with their match. They moved to a 3 times match this year and increased their email sends. Another one tested a 2 times versus a 3 times match, and the 3 times match was a significant winner. And then we saw a cultural institution get a 90% year-over-year increase in their Giving Tuesday revenues. And we think part of that was due to a match campaign they weren't able to run last year. And they also increased their email volume throughout the day. For those organizations that couldn't get a match, and which happens, totally understand that. Something to kind of plan for earlier this year would be to create potentially like a fund a match campaign where you ask donors to fund a match earlier in the year if you can't get a donor to provide a match for Giving Tuesday, and then you can segment them out on Giving Tuesday and give them the various segmented messaging depending on whether they funded the match or not. So next year, and we'll talk about this in our January webinar, is going to be a big challenge. We're going to have, of course, continued competition and potentially expand competition from the commercial sector, but there's also, as we all know, going to be a big election coming up right before Giving Tuesday, which we know will add to a lot of competition, but also potentially take some attention away from our giving season. So what we will be needing to do, which again we'll talk about in January, is really make sure to front load revenue as early as possible in the year to kind of hedge our bets into potentially a very challenging Q4 next year, potentially expanding Giving Tuesday into Giving Week. Should we be following what the commercial sector is doing with Cyber Monday becoming Cyber Week? Should we be working on more giving days and creating our own moments of giving throughout the year? Of course, using smart data models, making sure that we're expanding our omni-channel experience and providing our donors with really an audience first experience throughout the year is going to be really important. But that will all be interesting to see how everything unfolds, and we're already starting to prep our clients for this now. So
Thank you, Adva.
Questions?
I think you should just leapfrog them, Adva, and go for Giving October.
I know, right? I mean, we are starting, in some cases, nonprofits are promoting Giving Tuesday early and earlier. Some starting promotions early in November. And even I've seen programmatic ads starting in October. So it's not that far-fetched, Steve.
So the rule is, the first time you hear Mariah Carey's "All I Want for Christmas Is You" is when you want to make sure you have your Giving Tuesday messaging out there. Is what I hear.
Love that.
Any questions?
Well, thank you very much.
And if you'd like more details on this, on the More website, free white paper in the white paper section about that goes into more detail on all of this. And then on the education section under webinars, you can sign up for Adva's webinar in January as well. But also happy to answer any one-off questions on any of these sorts of things. And I'm happy to, Adva's happy to, because you can send them to me, but I'm just going to get her viewpoint on it either way.
I mean, it's very impressive results compared to like what Giving Tuesday and RKD and the other. I mean, they were reporting pretty flat. So I mean, that's impressive.
Yep. M&R had similar sort of, I think they said about 3/4 of their clients were up as well. It really is, it's a challenging environment with those increases in ad budgets and things like that. It does really require additional investment and additional effort. So it's hard won, and I want to thank the clients on this call who have been working on that, because I recognize quite a few of you that we saw having good results in the report, and it's tough, but still very worthwhile. Better Business Bureau just released their trust report. So the kind of obvious point is that they view, in surveying donors, donors say that high trust is very important. This is either a 9 or a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 on how important it is. 70% say it's either a 9 or a 10, and only 20% have that same 9 or 10 level of trust in organizations generally. Support is highest for veterans organizations. All 5 of the top 5 went up, except for religious organizations that dropped from 21 to 22. And you can see kind of that overall drop in religious organizations. It may be a factor of things like social service organizations were more integrally involved in pandemic relief and that type of work during the pandemic. So it may be more top of mind for folks, but it is nice to see that general upward trend from 19 to 20 to 21 to 22, see that trust increasing. Trust varies by age, so I realized that I cut off the legend for this. The blue here is Gen Z and gets older from there. So Gen Z is blue, the lilac is millennials, Gen X is green, boomers are yellow, and matures are dark blue. So you can see that veterans organizations more the older you are, the more you tend to trust veterans organizations. Same thing for religious organizations. Social service organizations tend to be the reverse, where the younger that you are, the more you trust those. And question in the chat, the survey here is from the Better Business Bureau, the BBB, and it's available at give.org. They have a site set up for these types of indicators. Thank you for that question. The top three that they asked people, what are the top signals that you should trust an organization? The number one by a decent margin is the accomplishments that they share. And then there's a group in the second tier of third-party evaluation, name recognition, opinions of friends and family, passion going into it, financial ratios, and appealing stories. So all of that kind of mushed together. I would say that appealing stories tend to go in with accomplishments shared, and you see third-party evaluation and financial ratios are usually conflated as well. So some interesting categories, but take these with a grain of salt because it is what people themselves have said. And if you know anything from survey research, there's social desirability bias, and people say what they think the person is wanting to hear a lot of the time. The things that would create that trust, what we just saw does vary by age. Financial ratios tend to be more important to older donors, and knowing what the charity will do with your money is more important among younger donors. And we see this in other research as well. People generally are more concerned about how you will spend their money than how you spend your money. And so there was a study on overhead ratios, and people were more likely to give to an organization if they had 50% of their funding spent on administrative and marketing costs, if those were defrayed by an outside gift, than if the organization had only 5%. And so it was, how was your gift spent rather than how are gifts spent generally. Interesting to see that increases the among younger audiences. People's stated donation channels, website, checkout counter, and mail. Most popular here, however, important to remember that channels of transaction and influence may be separate. It may be that you responded to a mail donated through a charity's website, responding to a mailed appeal. And so these categories are a little bit challenging. Those of you who have seen previous State of the Union meetings know that we've seen an increased trend of people getting the mail piece going online to donate. In 11 out of 13 channels, wealthier participants were more likely to donate. Only 2 were more popular with less wealthy folks, and that's checkout counter and social media appeal donations. Everything else, the more you make, the more you give, not surprisingly. Any questions on any of that? Okay. We are running tight on time, so we're not going to get to CTV. I'll run through some affluent giving from Bank of America. Wealthier households, not surprising, tend to give more. The top reasons they tend to give are personal values and interest in the issue area. And then there's need, repute, someone you know, those personal connections, and then everything else is much below that. About 5% of affluent households are using a donor advised fund, and they say they're doing it for tax reasons, ease of use, and I can have more impact if I can invest that money and it grows while I'm deciding what organizations to give to. 85% of affluent households said that the person making the decision is either a woman or a woman influences the decision more than among men, and women were more likely to volunteer. So interesting there. As we saw previously, there's been this decline in religious giving. So it's big, but it is a declining part of it. And part of that is that younger people are less likely to be donating. So older folks are more likely to donate because of religious life. Incidentally, I do object that this survey splits at 1981. So I am in the older individuals part of this category, more's the pity. Younger folks are more likely to give to climate change, education, older folks to aging, disaster relief, healthcare, and veterans charities. Older folks are more likely to give to basic needs, arts and culture, and religious as well. Oh, and it turns out we do have a couple minutes to talk CTV quickly. The reason that you see seatbacks here is that United Airlines is pulling passenger data and may start to have programmatic ads that you can show on the seat in front of you. And just another indication that people are finding more and more ways to deliver those programmatic advertisements. CTV is no longer just the province of the young. There are as many people 65 plus watching as there are in the 18 to 24 year old age group. And they're now the plurality of streaming watch time. And they're actually more likely to watch ad-supported television. So those people that you know are the most likely to be direct mail donors are able to be reached through video programmatic advertising. That said, younger folks still bread and butter here and are far more likely to be watching streaming than live TV. And the ad spend is continuing to rocket in this area. The Media Post is estimating that there will be a 22% increase in CTV ad spending next year. And finally, the first televisions are out. The reason that there are two televisions is this is a free 55-inch 4K TV. The price that you pay for it is that bar underneath. It's a secondary bottom display that is consistent programmatic advertising, and that's how they pay for the TVs. And so they said, why should TV networks have all the fun getting money from ad-supported tiers? Why can't the TV marketers get into this? So they shipped, I believe, $250,000 to start with this. Now, it does mean that there's a constant sensor and camera that you cannot turn off in order to get the TV. So that's the big stuff. Any question there? I'm gonna skip. Okay. Thank you all very much for your time. Good to see y'all. Let me know if you have any questions. Hope you have a good end of year giving season. And we will talk again in the new year if I don't hear from you between now and then.